Nithyananda, everyone, welcome back. Very excited to see you all again and continue with the early history of the Ramakrishna Movement. And let us begin chanting the Sadguru Vandanam. Nithyanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Tvandvatitam Gagana Sarisham Tattvamasyadilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadhi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Trigunaraitam Sadgurum Tam Namami. Yes, we resume at this page, avoiding to know the page number. You have to check it. We can see this is where it came from. Chapter 1. Approximately page 23 in chapter 1. Recognizing the significant role she had played during the formative period of the order, Swamiji in his lecture entitled My Life and Mission said, "Who would sympathize with the imaginations of a boy, imaginations that caused so much suffering to others? Who would sympathize with me? None except one. That lady, his wife, was the only one who sympathized with the idea of those boys," being the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. The Master's spirit guided them even after he left his body. The charge made by some Brahmo leaders that Sri Ramakrishna lacked an organizing faculty proved to be baseless, for the Master successfully organized a cohesive group of dedicated souls who later constituted the core of the monastic brotherhood and the devotees community. One day in the second week of January 1886, the Master distributed ochre clothes and Rudraksha beads to 11 of his disciples, and although this action was not given formal recognition until after his death, thus laid the foundation of the Ramakrishna order of monks. At the Master's behest, they begged food in the neighborhood, and the Master partook of it. The curtain fell on the great life of the Master 2 minutes past 1 in the early hours of 16th of August, 1886. Caught almost unprepared, the young disciples were too dazed and bewildered to think what they ought to do, but a chain of events was to show them the way. When, as a mark of her widowhood, Sharda Devi started removing the gold bangles from her arms, the Master appeared to her and said, "I'm not dead, I've only moved from one room to another." The sacred remains of the Master's body, kept in a copper urn later called Sriji, served it as a symbol of the immortal presence of the Master. Immediately the disciples took steps toward worshipping Sri Ramakrishna in this urn. One evening, within a week of the Master's passing, Narendra saw him as a luminous being. Although these episodes were reinforcing the young disciples with the faith, reassurance, and strength necessary to withstand the pressure exerted on them to return to their homes, they had to sorrowfully see off Sri Sarda Devi on 21st of August. Balaram Bose took care of her and arranged for her pilgrimage to Vrindavan. Simultaneous to the events mentioned, which chronicled the development of the future monastic disciples, other events were taking place which distinguished the householder from the monastic branches of Sri Ramakrishna's followers. One such impressive episode was the Master's revelation to the householder devotees. On the afternoon of 1st of January 1886, the Master blessed them, saying, "Be illumined." The effect was marvelous. The minds of all present were revolutionized. Swami Shardananda, explaining the significance of the episode, wrote, "The Master, by revealing his true nature to the devotees, set them free from fear. Every one of them in later life served as a model householder, with his mind fixed at the lotus feet of God. While the householders were thus enjoying various rapturous states, some of the future monastic disciples took the opportunity to clean the Master's room and perform other acts of menial service." And others were asleep, having attended the Master or having meditated through the previous night. In late February of 1886, some of the householder devotees took the all-renouncing devotees to task for their alleged extravagance. This incensed Narendra and other young disciples, and the Master sided with them. However, the Master subsequently pacified them. The two parties were reconciled, but since that event, each group upheld its distinct status, thus maintaining a dignified difference. The division of the Master's relics also indicates that, in fact, the future monastics had formed a separate group. A large portion of the Master's relics, which had been secretly transferred to a pot by the young disciples, was sent to Balaram Boshe's house, where it was worshipped daily as the living presence of the Master. It was later taken to the Baranagore monastery. The remaining portion was taken in a procession and ceremoniously interred at the retreat of Ramachandra Dutta at Kankurgachi on 23rd August. The budding monastery at Kasipur had to be disbanded at the end of August 1886. A polarity developed between the devotees group led by Ramachandra Dutta and the group of all-renouncing monks led by Narendranath. Each had conflicting principles and ideals that sharpened initially, but after about a decade, the differences gradually became diffused, and still later, the two merged into one and the same Ramakrishna movement. The movement forges ahead. As we look back, the events at the Kasipur garden house appeared clearer in today's perspective than they did at the time of their occurrence. What actually happened in those few months may be summed up this way. Like a fruit vendor who comes to the marketplace in the morning, makes the best bargains to sell the fruit throughout the day, but towards the close of the day, disposes of them quite liberally, much to the joy and surprise of the recipients. Sri Ramakrishna, during his ministration at Dakshineshwar and other places, distributed spiritual bounties cautiously and was rather miserly. However, as he decided to wind up the divine play, he showered grace unsparingly, first among the householder devotees and thereafter among the renunciates. Sri Ramakrishna persuaded Sri Sharada Devi to take up the assignment as a co-sharer of his mission. He also gave her hints and guidance during this period. Apparently, neither she nor those who survived the Master could envision her future role vis-a-vis the movement during those days. Sri Ramakrishna spared no pain in giving special training to a group of chosen young men, with Narendranath as their leader. He entrusted Narendra with the responsibility of holding them together so that they could devote themselves to realizing God, the goal of human life. It seems he did not present Narendra with a clear path of action for the future. However, empowered by his guru Sri Ramakrishna and unstintingly supported by his brother disciples, Narendranath moved forward. Among the householder disciples, none seems to have had an idea of the future plan of the group of young renunciates. Some pooh-poohed them, and some others opposed them. However, there were a few others who lent them unquestioning moral support. All these elements gradually coalesced to form a coherent stream. As it gathered force and as the number of its following swelled, it took the shape of conspicuous movement, thus laying bare the major strands of events associated with the birth and growth of the Ramakrishna Movement. We can see for ourselves the divine enterprise in which the Master and his disciples had been engaged, and also the all-comprehensive preparations the grand architect Sri Ramakrishna had made. But though the ground had been prepared, seed sown and water given, a fence for the protection of the new plant was still wanting. Thus, this want was fulfilled by the formal establishment of the mutt or monastery, popularly known as the Barnagore Mutt. Well, we're going to close it at that for now. But we're just going to peek ahead, maybe a page or two. Super. Zamindars. Wow. 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 Okay, awesome. Well, there it is. That's everything for today. Thanks for being here. Great to see everyone. And we're just going to complete that, and we're going to move on to actually reading of Bhagavad Gita now. So we'll complete this session chanting Paramantra. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sarvam Bhagavad Shri Nithyananda Paramashiva Parukar Punamastu. Om Nithyanandam. Yes, thank you everyone. Nithyanandam.